Hey parents, and welcome back. I decided to explore deeper the masturbation barrier conversation because I know it's not only my story, or it's not only a female story or a male story. And as part of my research, I met with Sar Surmick, who introduced me to the world of transgender and to the barriers or struggle that transgender might have with masturbation. Sar Surmick is a trans therapist specializing in identity and non-monogamy, author, and the director of the Consent Academy. I asked Sar to explain to us what is transgender in his own way.
Thank you for putting it that way, because this is my way of explaining it. Other people will explain it in different ways. I look at transgender as an identity. Right? It's very much an umbrella term that refers to a person whose gender, which is their lived or internal concept of who they are as a person, when that is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. So there's a lot of people who fall under the trans umbrella, and there's a lot of confusion about what it means and how people identify that way. And I think the really thing just to note to people is that it's an identity. So it's how a single individual identifies. And if they tell you they're trans, they're trans. Under the transgender umbrella, you have a whole lot of different people who fit into that. So there are ways of expressing that vary from person to person. So you have like trans femme or trans feminine people who are transgendered, who identify with a female or a feminine persona. You have trans masculine or trans masc people who identify with a male or masculine persona. You have people who refer to themselves as FTM, so female to male transitioning. That's typically somebody who was assigned female at birth and who is transitioning in their life to a male or masculine way of being in the world. And then you have MTF, male to female transgender, who are people who were assigned male at birth, who are transitioning to a female or a feminine way of being in the world. Some of these things involve hormones, some of them involve surgery, and not all of them do. So you can have somebody who is transgender who is not pursuing any physical alteration in their body, but still identifies in that place. And then there are people who move into the medical side of things and use either hormones that they're taking to change the way their body appears, do other things to change their outward presentation. And some people also involve that with surgery, either top surgery to reduce breast size or increase breast size, or bottom surgery, which involves a whole lot of variation depending on the genitalia that the person has.
Another question I asked Sarah was, what can parents do if their child comes out to them and share that they are transgender?
There's a lot more kids who are coming out as trans, and because it is such a broad field, it can be very difficult for people to know exactly what that means. If you have a child who tells you that they're trans or transgendered, the best thing you can do in that case is to just say, okay, can you explain to me what that means to you? Right? And so you're not trying to fit someone into a box, even if it's a large box. You're not trying to fit someone into that box. You're asking them where they see themselves within that umbrella of identities.
So what are the struggles or the barriers that trans people have with masturbation?
When it comes to masturbation for people who are trans, there's a lot more complexity even than the normal social, cultural issues that are involved. A big one is that someone who, let's say, was AMAB, assigned male at birth, and has a feminine or female gender, right? So they're transgender. They have a penis and testicles, and there's just a base biological instinct, a base biological drive to get release, especially when you're a teenager. But if they identify as a woman or a girl, then girls have a vulva. And so they're working with a structure that goes against the identity that they have. And oftentimes they experience what we call dysphoria. Dysphoria is where you experience a part of your body in a negative way because it doesn't match your internal identity. And gender dysphoria, to be more specific, is when a part of your body doesn't match your internal identity surrounding your concept of gender. So someone who's trans often experiences dysphoria around their genitals when their genitals don't match their concept of what their identity is.
What will be your advice for trans who struggle with masturbation?
It varies from person to person. Like some people simply don't engage, right? They don't masturbate, they don't touch themselves, they try to ignore that part of their body. That's one solution. It's not often the healthiest because, as I said, there are still biological drives. So if I am a person who is AMAB, assigned male at birth, and I have a penis and testicles, but I imagine myself or I see myself as a woman, then how do I masturbate? How do I explore sexual pleasure with myself in a way that is still in line with my gender and my identity? And it's a really tricky topic, in part because of everything we mentioned before, right? The societal, cultural issues around masturbation in the first place. And then how does one get around dysphoria in order to have the experience of pleasure within one's body? There's a number of things that people do. Sometimes people engage just their imagination, right? They imagine themselves with the genitals of the sex that they prefer. Some people use prosthetics to enhance that imagination play. Maybe a strap-on, or there's certain types of underwear that give the impression of a vulva, and even more complex prosthetics from there. Another technique that is sometimes useful is kind of what we call rewiring. And this is especially useful for people who aren't looking to engage in genital surgery, in gender affirming genital surgery, to be specific. We talk about it as a rewiring. Like, how do you get your brain to sort of start doing things in a different way? And that technique has three parts. The first part is reframing, thinking about your genitalia as the sex that you associate with your gender. You think of your penis and your testicles as highly feminine. You think of them as an extension of the vulva. Once you can manage that, once it's in your head, then you practice with the association that sometimes practice doesn't work. You see what ways feel good to you, what thoughts feel good, what imagination, what fantasy, that sort of thing feels good. And you use that practice to get to the third phase, which is acceptance. I am female and my genitals are female, even though they look like what a man's genitals would look like. And so you pull those three things together and it helps move the brain into a place where your identity, the way you think about yourself, matches the practice that you're engaging in to receive self-pleasure. And to take it one step further, you then use that self-understanding and self-acceptance when you then engage in sexual behavior with another person. Not only does it allow you to tell them how you feel best about your body and how you like to be touched and what works for you, but also you can explain to them why you refer to your body in certain ways and how you release, whether that's with orgasm or not, but how you experience a sexual release because you've done the practice yourself already. For trans folk, because they have to do that exploration, right? It's not something they can just follow a social script and go along with. They actually have to do that self-exploration. It gives them a much more incredible sense of who they are, as long as, and here's the part that goes for parents, as long as they have support from the people who love and care about them. If we are taught to shame our body, whether it be a trans body or a cis body or whatever, then it's really hard to engage that part of our identity. It's hard to engage that part of our authenticity. And one of the things that often happens is that people are shamed for having any sexual practice whatsoever, even if it's only a solo sexual practice, which doesn't hurt anybody and only brings more pleasure into the world. So,
what is one tip you can share with parents if their child is trans?
Well, one of the things I like to really note for parents is that part of your job, if you have a trans child, is to support them in their identity exploration, however that works best for them, because everybody goes through it in a different path, in a different journey. When they come out the other side, they will have a really amazing concept of who they are, because as we like to say, they're playing on a higher difficulty level. The best way for parents, honestly, to do that is just to be open. You can come talk to me. I'll accept you for who you are. If there's any questions you have, if I don't know the answers, I will try to find out, or I'll try to connect you with somebody who does.
And if you are trans listening to this interview, here's a powerful message from Sar.
If you are trans and you are watching and listening to this, your way of figuring this out is beautiful. Your way of figuring this out is amazing. Your way of exploring your body and figuring out what pleasure means to you is your way of doing it, and nobody else gets to tell you if that's right or wrong, as long as you do it in a consensual way, right? So if you're doing it with yourself, that's fine. Explore to your heart's content. When you move to doing it with other people, think about how you can share with them what is beautiful, what is loving, what is sexual, and to do that in a consensual way.
The interview with Sar was an eye-opening for me. If you want to contact Sar directly, I linked his website in the description below. I'll see you next week. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't done so. Bye!